Hey, welcome back to the shop. We're going to pick up where we left off. You'll recall from the last video, we located and welded in the front portion of the trunk pan, along with the Detroit Speed upper shock cross member, the track bar body mount, and all the other related fab work for the DSE quadralink. You can see here I've set the back half of the trunk pan in place. Today we're going to focus in on the installation of the Detroit Speed Trunk Closeouts, those heavy gauge steel gussets that provide relief to the front corners of the trunk pan and allow some flexibility to route 3-inch exhaust to the rear of a First Gen Camaro. Take you through the process. Let's get started. So what exactly do these trunk closeouts achieve? Well, let's go in for a closer look. Here you see the underside of the trunk pan, well below the elevation of the frame rail. The intent of the closeout is to raise the elevation of this trunk pan floor up above the frame rail, allowing a clear path of travel for a 3-inch exhaust up to the underside of the frame rail as opposed to down here below the trunk level. Why is that important? Because look at the conflict in this location. You have the track bar and the track bar mounting holes. So you can't bring a 3-inch exhaust through here because you're in conflict with the track bar. And that's the beauty of the closeout. It raises up and provides some flexibility to get over that track bar and bring your 3-inch exhaust out to the tail pan. All right. There's a couple of constraints that you have to be mindful of, and I'm going to show you those now. Okay, I flipped the floor assembly on its side on the rotisserie to show you the first constraint, and that is the supports for the gas tank. You don't want to be cutting into these supports, so that front edge, the outside edge of these supports becomes your limiting distance. So that angled gusset projected against the crossmember support. You see here I've already notched it. I'm a little ahead of myself, but we'll explain exactly how you go about doing that. This is a constraint to limit the size of the closeout. Okay, there is some trimming involved in order not to impact the gas tank support. So be mindful of that as you fit these closeouts in place. Let's go around to the top side and look at the other constraint. Okay, up top here. So where do you locate these things? Maximize the void underneath and have it flush with the top of the frame rail? Well, no, because then it doesn't pick up the elevation of the floor, right? This has to be set low enough so that the floor can sit on this lip. So how do you get this dimension from here projected on to the cross member, right? Because there's no value in bringing this thing up too high. All you need to do is to bring this elevation up above the frame rail, right? And having said that, that's a perfect segue into the second constraint, which is the height of this closeout itself. It's roughly 2¼ inches. All right, so we have to establish an elevation from the floor pan up about 2¼ inches, level and plumb, tie into the shock cross member, and similarly level and plumb the duration and length of that closeout against the frame rail. I'm not welding the edge of the closeout to the trunk pan. I need to section it and project the closeout against the frame rail. So I'm tying the frame rail and the cross member together, attaching the floor to the bottom lip, and clearancing this front section of the pan to allow for a 3-inch exhaust. There's the executive summary. Okay, so let's project the elevations across. Okay, to project those levels across the length of the closeout, I've attached a straight edge, in my case my aluminum level, and clamped it to the cross member, which is level and plumb, right? Project that out, and then simply use an adjustable square resting on top of my straight edge, which in essence is my datum, and I adjust the length of the ruler until it's flush with the floor. So in my case, that dimension is 9 inches, okay? 9 inches from the top of my level to the floor. So now I need to bring that elevation up 2¼ inches. I'm going to raise it 2 inches, so I have a 1/4 inch of tolerance that I can grind to. Easier to remove material than add, right? So I'm going to adjust my set square to 7 inches, raising it 2 inches, and then project those lines. I'm going to adjust the square and come back. So with my adjustable square adjusted, I'm able to bring that line down. So you see here, this is the precise tolerance, which I've established off this front edge. So that's the full 2 1/4 inches. I've brought that 2 1/4 inches to the top line, and then I've given myself a 1/4 inch tolerance. So the lower line is going to be my cut line. I've marked both sides. One other thing of note, because this projects in at a 45 and the trunk pan isn't tight against the frame rail, so this is the extent of the closeout itself, but because this trails off at a 45, if you cut it out here, you're going to have a gap, right? So that squiggly line is more or less where I think the cross member is going to cross, but I'm going to stay clear of that too and just whittle up against it once I have the closeouts welded into place. Okay, I'm going to remove the trunk pan and give you clear lines of sight into what how those things butt up against the frame rails. So here's another example of why I removed the trunk pan from the rear half of the car, from the cross member back. I've placed the trunk closeouts supported by magnets, tight against the cross member, tucked into the corner against the frame rail. Now I'm going to transfer the profile of the frame rail onto the cutout so I know where to trim. So with a scribe, I can easily reference that frame rail, which I've already done and highlighted the mark in felt so you can easily see it. So I know exactly where to trim the closeout so that it's nice, tight, flush fit against the frame rail. I'm going to do that on the other side, and the closeouts will be ready for installation. Okay, flip you around to this side. Trunk floor has been removed. I've set the trunk closeout in place with these heavy gauge magnets. Come to the underside. You can see here, nice clean tolerance along this edge. I'm going to tack it in a couple places. It is 90 degrees because of the right angle magnets, but I think I'm still going to put my level across on that square just to validate that this front edge is true and plumb, and then I'll tack it at this back corner. So the beauty of being able to do this with the trunk pan off is I can weld against the frame from both sides, the top and the bottom. You'd never be able to access this location with the trunk pan on, right? So it gives me full access. And then similarly, without the trunk pan on, I can dress any sort of weld penetration from the inside of the frame and seal it with Steelit. And also I'm probably going to gusset or box the frame internally at at a couple different points throughout this location as well before I cap it with the floor. All right, tack it in place, check for level and plumb along this side, and we'll come back with it tacked in. Okay, we're all welded in, top and bottom. Check it out. All right, there we go, both sides. Flip my rotisserie over, see the underside. There we go. Just got to clean things up. Oh yeah, I don't think I showed you. You know, this curved gusset on the track bar. I copied it and gusseted the edge of this side of the shock mount back to the track bar mount, and similarly down at this end I filled in that gap with heavy plate and then created another curved gusset and boxed in that bottom edge. Everything's nicely welded. I just got to clean up some of these welds. I don't like to leave it all exposed. Go over it smooth it over with a grinding wheel, less surface area. Looks cleaner, I think, for the amount of effort it takes. I'm gonna do that. Next, the skin goes on. Okay, time to fit the trunk pan on. You'll recall from the floor assembly layout, I've established center lines throughout the entire assembly. So I have an easy reference point to measure from the center line to the start of the trunk closeout both sides. In my case, I've obviously centered them, so it's roughly 8.5 inches out from the center. I transfer that dimension to the floor pan. Here it is upside down on my welding table. Center line, 8.5 inches is roughly there. So I'm coming in off of it a bit. I'll use the cutoff wheel and establish that cut out the bottom portion, both sides, and do the first initial test fit to see how close I'm at. I notched the front corner of the trunk pan, both sides. You can see I'm inching up on it. The squiggly line was where I guesstimated the 45-degree angle to penetrate through the floor pan and continue on to the frame rail. So I stayed back from that as well, but now you can begin to see how much I have to trim. So I can't slide it or push it any further, so I can actually measure that distance from the front of the pan that butts up against the cross member and extend that same distance back, and I'll stay off of it and then inch up to it as well. But that'll give me a clear indication of how much more I need to cut out on both sides. Okay, until I end up pushing up against this tolerance, right? So let's start with this one, and then I'll fit it, and then see how much further I have to come back on the inside. It's a process. Okay, next step. We're back. Multiple test fits, in, out, whittle, whittle. Get a nice tight tolerance. So I'm ready to weld. I'm happy with the fit. All my screws lined up to secure the trunk pan where it was with confidence. Take you around to the other side and show you the outcome. All right, we're back on the passenger side of the frame rail. You see here the after shot. I'll insert the before. You see the before, how low the trunk pan was, and now the after. The trunk closeouts are doing their job. Nice clear access to route a 3-inch exhaust to the middle of the car and back out under the frame rail without the conflict. So the closeouts welded in nicely. Now I need to weld the trunk pan down all along. But before I can do that, I have to take the trunk pan off one more time and drill some plug welds or holes for plug welds both sides. And also I have to resolve what I'm doing here for the mini tub. You're gonna have to tune into the next video to see what I'm doing with that, but I saved that till the end. The skin's ready to go on. I'm gonna put a few more gussets on the frame rail. I'll showcase that in the next video too, and pick up where we left off here. If you like what you've been seeing, please subscribe, help the channel out, and look forward to chatting with you shortly. Cheers.